What is the color of water?
White.
White. Okay. And milk? Also white. For me, you see where I come from, we say the water is blue and the sky is blue, and you say the sky is black, the water is white, so we have different words to talk about the same thing.
Di vista vedere quello che vede lui. Lo spettatore o vede quello che vede lui o non vede. That's the problem. It's very simple, no? Or you see something, what I see, or you don't see nothing, and I am sorry. Next time maybe I can do something else. Like, it's very simple, no?
There is.
Yes.
Have a look for her translation and then we'll come.
Oh, sorry, it's good.
Okay, now you look at these new 12 squares. One of them again has a different color. Which one? Okay, can you point one more time towards the different color? Very good. So you see, in this particular trial, this green patch looks very much like the other ones, at least to me, and I think to most other Westerners. Whereas for the Himba, this is a different color. Well, they have a different word for this type of green compared to the other types of green. And that allows them to more easily distinguish between these two colors when they're next to each other. Whereas for her, it is very hard. So when Westerners do this exact same trial, they will spend much longer and they will be much more likely to make a mistake than the Himba. So again, 12 colors, and you point towards the one that is different from the other 11 colors.
Can't see it.
Okay, that was a difficult one for him. The difference between the two categories of color is very close to each other. For us, it's quite clear the one that is different, but for them, they have to look very hard. We measure the time they take to give the response, as well as errors, and what we find is that the Himba will take much longer to find the different color in this version of the experiment with blue and green.
There is a difference between seeing and looking.
Guardare vuol dire così, no? Muovere gli occhi superficialmente, invece vedere vuol dire capire anche cosa vedi, no?
To see means to understand what you see, but to look is just sort of like to look superficially.
Se io devo mettere gli occhiali, per esempio, sono colpito meno, no? Per esempio, no? E come avviene questo? È anche abbastanza misterioso. Io trovo che è interessante che sia misterioso.
It's sort of mysterious, like how this happened. It's not that there are ways in which one can define how the interaction, right, may happen or may not happen or may be reproduced, and in what ways it can be reproduced. Even himself, looking at the same work. Puts his glasses differently, or it's an issue of energies again. He's saying it depends, right? What energies are involved and how this. So there is no single answer. There is no straight answer to such a question.
Ich denke, das erklärt sich selber.
Die Aufmerksamkeit soll geweckt werden, aber nicht auf vorhersehbare Art.
Entro in uno spazio che devo anche ammettere è abbastanza vuoto, questo qui, no? E non vedo i quadri, è come se non ci fosse la mostra, e allora non vedo niente e esco, capisci?
It's sort of like this idea of looking is sort of like a prejudice that like many prejudices that we all have. Is it depends on the expectations that we also have. Like if I walk in a space where I expect to be that there is a show, I expect that there's a show there, and I expect it to be with paintings, and then I walk in this space, and this space is particularly empty, and I don't find the paintings, then I don't think that there's a show, and therefore I just walk out again.
There is no such thing as making art.
Kunst lässt sich ohnehin nicht außerhalb eines Kontextes machen. Und das heißt, dass für mich mein künstlerisches Wertesystem jederzeit in Frage gestellt werden kann.
who made something is
Heute ist der Name dessen, der etwas gemacht hat, keine magische Formel mehr.
because we have in the world such
Denn wir haben heute derart
apparatus
komplizierte
for making
Apparaturen, um Dinge herzustellen, dass es einfältig wäre, mit den großen Meistern, den Kräften, in Konkurrenz treten zu wollen, die die Dinge erzeugen.
the real masters.
In der Vielfalt der Formate sind sie wichtiger als ich.
National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Die NASA macht in der Vielfalt und der Gestalt wichtigere Dinge als ich.
Greater variety, size, and scope than I am. And well, there's, and then, God can make more
Gott
stuff.
macht alles besser als ich.
So this is a
Auf diese Herausforderung will ich mich nicht einlassen.
It's really pointless to enter in. So I choose an arrangement.
So habe ich ein alternatives Konzept übernommen, nämlich irgendwo ein Zeichen zu hinterlassen.
To leave a mark of some sort.
Worauf wollen Sie hinweisen?
Oh, everything.
Auf alles.
Zum Beispiel?
That is, everything
Dass
has a
jedes Ding seine
possibility.
Möglichkeiten hat. Dass der Boden eben ist und die Mauer senkrecht.
That a wall goes this way.
Warum denn? Das weiß doch jeder.
Nein,
No.
È un'idea macroscopica dell'idea, ma è l'idea sempre, non so come dire, realizzata, no? Vivendola.
There's an idea, there's me, there's reality, and my work is trying to present this idea, and therefore this relation between me, the reality, and the idea. So it's always this issue of energy and time again.
Warum benötigt man zusätzliche Informationen?
nicht man benötigt die Information, gewisse Leute benötigen sie. Einige wollen sie nicht und benötigen sie trotzdem. Warum benötigen wir Kunst? Die Kunst ist wohl die einzige Sache, für die es keine Begründung gibt. Kein Grund und keine Ausrede. Und wenn Sie sie wollen, nehmen Sie sie. Die Information ist da. Und falls Sie sie nicht wollen, ich werde Sie weder zwingen noch Sie überzeugen. Mir ist es genug, meine Arbeit zu zeigen. Und an Ihnen ist es, sie zu akzeptieren oder abzulehnen.
Das ist anders, als was früher gemacht wurde. Man konnte ein Kunstwerk mit nach Hause nehmen und dort anschauen.
Das können Sie doch bei sich zu Hause auch machen und damit leben. Oder Sie können es für den Rest Ihres Lebens in Erinnerung behalten. Wo immer Sie hingehen, können Sie es anfertigen und es Ihr Leben lang sehen. Das ist kein wertvolles Einzelstück, aber eine Einzelidee. Auch bei 20, 60 oder 100 Präsentationen ist sie jedes Mal neu. Mir gefällt die Idee, dass sich dieses Objekt nicht versichern lässt. Sie können es verlieren, Sie können es zerstören, aber es bleibt für immer da. Nichts kann ihm geschehen. Das ist alles.
Elettrici che fanno sì che l'idea ci sia nel cervello.
Time is very important. Time is everything, and time is everything. Is very important, and even ideas are energy. If the brain works, it works because of energy. It is a sort of right. It is an electrical tissue.
Naturalmente l'energia mi consente non solo di introdurre l'elemento tempo, ma l'elemento che non vedi, cioè l'energia che non vedi, l'energia potenziale, una torsione che è lì che lavora, tu l'energia non la vedi ma la puoi percepire però, no?
And the work with energy allows me to introduce these invisible elements, to talk about what's invisible. A torsion allows me to present something which we cannot see.
We are very confident at talking about time only in domains where we have a lot of clocks, either man-made clocks or nature-made clocks like atoms. Yet, very early on, and in the very, very distant future, there might be situations where there are no clocks. And I'm not just talking about digital watches now, but I'm talking about atoms. If all of this stuff has somehow been destroyed, if we just have some kind of soup where nothing is changing at all, where nothing is happening, then does it even make sense to talk about time flowing? And can there be time in any meaningful sense without change? If nothing is happening, does it make sense to talk about time flowing? I'm not claiming I know the answer, I just want to throw this question out here.
When the mind is not present, there is no time. So the recognition, the simple recognition of our own being is timeless. The body doesn't know. I mean, your cheek is not listening to these words. An earlobe is not listening to these words. A thought cannot hear. A thought cannot see.
The last recorded words of Ulysses S. Grant was, sometimes I think I'm a verb instead of a pronoun, a verb, and then he went on to say the things a verb could be. It expresses to be. And he said, I am, and therefore I'm a verb. It was just I thought it very wonderful. Because the idea that the self is constantly in movement, if you like. And just to tell you something very briefly, I was in France, I was working on a project, a postal art project. Anyway, what I did was I asked people in different parts of the world at a certain time to pick up a pencil and a piece of paper and to try to think of an image. One of the occasions when I was supposed to be engaged in this, my pencil just went on moving. And it was extremely peculiar because a complete dissociation. I mean, I was watching my hand, move across the paper, and it was writing in a bizarre handwriting that wasn't anything like my handwriting. And it got quite frantic. There was a page after page after page of this stuff. And I always said afterwards that this is what precipitated me outside the bounds of pure conceptualism. Because conceptual art was, at the beginning, a question of dealing with what was already in language. And this experience was not, it wasn't part of that way of thinking.
Mind is a problem. It needs to be, in order to find what I want, I need to still it, I need to quieten it. It didn't necessarily mean more meditation. For a while it did. But then after a while that began to stop. And I realized that in a way I had superimposed this practice on myself, which was supposed to be the answer for everything.
I used to meditate until I learned to stop thinking. Now I stop thinking, don't think of anything. Before you train yourself to stop thinking, there's just all kinds of stuff going through your mind. Not anymore. Nothing goes through my mind.
But I still feel there's a separation between the mind and the brain, if you like.
No, I'm interested. Tell me more.
There's a lot of research on so-called lucid dreaming. They set people a task, for example, and they might say to someone, okay, if you're a lucid dreamer tonight when you're asleep, go into the lucid dreaming mode and perform such and such a task. And people do things such as using Morse code to tap out the phrase, I am dreaming. Now, the brain waves that are being recorded show that they're in a dream situation. But they are conscious and aware, which means they have something different than the brain. Otherwise, what would be the mechanism?
Well, you could argue that there are different aspects going on in the mind, right? Why would you want to call it brain?
Well, because that's the way they measure dreaming. They, not psychoanalysts, but scientists, measure dreaming by the activity. Yes, the brain activity.
I think we've gotten dangerously close to now telling our universe a bit about how we want it to be to conform with our notions about what we feel comfortable about. And ultimately, I feel our job as scientists shouldn't be to tell our universe how to behave, but to look at her very carefully and see how does it work. And what it really is isn't something which is of interest merely because it's fascinating philosophically speaking, but it's also related to all of the most difficult unsolved problems in physics. And I think none of us can confidently say we know what the ultimate theory of everything in physics is going to be, but I think whatever it is, really understanding the nature of time is going to be one of the key ingredients of it.
I don't believe what the intellectuals put out. The intellectuals, they they discover one fact and another fact and another fact, and then they say, and from all these facts, we can deduce so and so. No good. That's just a bad guess. Nothing can come but inaccuracy. Everyone will learn the truth about life. So I had a hard time giving up some of them, but I managed it. Evolution. I gave up the idea of evolution. All of them. I gave up all the theories, even the atomic theory. And then I don't have any ideas myself. I don't believe anybody else's, so that leaves me a clear mind.
I remember one very strong experience I had at school. I was learning all these facts mainly about science. I was studying science, and it came to me very strongly one day that there's no end to this knowledge. Objective knowledge, you could just go on forever. It could never be resolved. The knowledge that I was being given were scientific theories that were replacing previous ones and would, in time, be replaced. So I wanted to know, but what is really true? What is true? I've spent my life being educated, but what is true? What is real?
Well, that's like Freud. Yeah, of course. Because you know that he wrote about Freud, but possibly people who don't know about some of his earlier writings, I think. He wrote about telepathy, and he wrote about transference as being a form of mind-to-mind connection, and he has recorded that and a number of other extremely interesting experiences without allowing them to slip into this category called the occult. He's just saying this is human, this is what people are. And he says at one point that he would rather trust the curious superstitions of the common people than the sort of prosaic dismissal of them by scientists, because he learns to keep an open mind. And all of this is, of course, nowadays coming forward as something we need to think about, because if physics can suggest that we live in 7 different dimensions simultaneously, then how can we refuse that invitation?
If inflation theory is correct, and we take it seriously, we have to take seriously the idea that space is bigger than our universe, that there are parallel universes, other regions of space that are just too far away for us to see. I call these parallel universes the level 1 parallel universes, because they're not that different from our universe. The only difference is that over there, the particles started out in different places, so the galaxies formed in different ways. And if there are people over there, they will still learn the same things in physics class, but they might learn different things in history class, because things started out differently and history unfolded differently. Then there's level 2. And that's something that you end up with if you combine the theory of inflation with one more idea. So the theory of inflation actually converts potentiality into reality. It'll make a universe with this kind of space, with that kind of space, with a third kind of space. Some string theorists think that there's 10 to the power 500 different kinds of space even. And what does it feel like to live in one of those parallel universes if they exist? Well, more interesting and diverse than in the level 1 kind, because they wouldn't only learn different things in history class, they would actually learn different things in physics class. They might learn, for example, that there are not 6 kind of quarks, which is what I learned in physics class, but that there are 10 kinds of quarks, or 2 kinds of quarks. Many of the properties that we thought were fundamental properties of physics, according to string theory, are just telling you which particular solution of string theory you're in. Well, and there's even more. There's a third kind of parallel universes which have come into the scientific discussion from studying not the biggest things, but from studying the smallest things, by studying quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics tells us that little particles can be in several places at once, If the particles can be in several places at once, well, I'm made of these particles. I should be able to be in several places at once. What it really means is that there is a third kind of parallel universes, where when you make certain decisions, effectively our world splits into several parallel tracks. If I get a parking ticket, there's a parallel universe maybe where I didn't. But there's another parallel universe maybe where my car was stolen instead. So you win some, you lose some. We should also be mindful that we humans have again and again made this mistake of underestimating the size of our cosmos. First we thought Earth was the center of everything, right? Then we discovered that our solar system existed in a galaxy and a universe. So it might very well happen again.